Hello, my name is Xenia, and I want to start off by asking a question. How many of you are parents or have little siblings? So you may know that they get a little bit out of hand sometimes and like to get into trouble. That's just their nature. I want to show you a photo of a young boy by the name of Gabriel Fernandez. This is Gabriel Fernandez when he was 8 years old. This is the time that he was being raised by his grandparents. Now I want to warn you that the next picture is going to be pretty graphic. And this is Gabriel Fernandez at 8 years old, being raised by his mother for only 8 months. Gabriel Fernandez started off in a positive environment, living with his grandparents, but his mother had always had rights to take full custody, and so she did just that. On October of 2012, Gabriel moved in with his mother Pearl and her boyfriend Isario and 3 other siblings. Beatriz Venhoven wrote an article on his Netflix documentary stating that according to court records, Gabriel was abused by his mother Pearl and his mother's boyfriend Isario. The abuse was extremely severe. They fed him cat litter. They locked him up in a cabinet. They put a bandana in a sock to muffle his screams and cries. They knocked out his teeth with a bat. They shot him in the face with a BB gun. And they pepper sprayed him for fun while he would lay in the bathtub. He would show up to school with bruises all over his body, as well as fresh cigarette burns and shaved head. Gabriel's brother testified in court that on several occasions, Isario would hold him up by the neck so that him and his little sister could knock the air out of him. For 8 straight months, he was abused, beaten, and tortured. On May 22nd of 2013, Pearl called 911 to report that her son wasn't breathing. She told responding deputies that he had fallen off of a dresser and hit his head at their home. When the paramedics arrived, they found Gabriel naked in a bedroom, not breathing, and he had a cracked skull, 3 broken ribs, and BB pellets were found embedded in his lungs and in his groin. LA County Fire Department paramedic James Cermak said it was just like every inch of the child had been abused. Gabriel died after being in a coma 2 days later. What will happen if we don't help stop child abuse? According to welfarechild.org, child abuse can affect brain development, causing malnutrition of the cognitive, social, and emotional skills. There also become psychological consequences. It is a risk factor for depression and anxiety, and often leads to suicide ideations and other psychiatric disorders while growing up. Another study sponsored by the National Institute of Justice followed cases from children throughout adulthood and compared arrest records for a group of children with cases of abuse and compared it with a group of children with children who didn't have any cases of abuse. While most member of both groups had no juvenile or adult criminal records, being abused or neglected as a child increased the likelihood of arrest as a juvenile by 53% and as a young adult by 38%. Physically abused children were most likely the children to be arrested later for a violent crime. Child fatality is also an effect of child abuse. The death of a child is more tragic when it could have been prevented. Child protection agencies play a critical role in the prevention of child abuse and neglect fatalities, but they cannot work alone. This is where we have to come into play. The national estimate of victims who died from abuse and neglect decreased from 1,800 for the year of 2019 to 1,750 for the year of 2020. Now, my theory is that this could have been because of COVID. Students were out of school and there wasn't mandated reporters around to report the abuse on these children. What if it's just harsh discipline from the parent? How do we know the difference? It is important that we know and understand the signs of abuse. I'm not saying that it's okay, and every parent disciplines different and in their own way towards their kids. But harsh discipline is different from abuse because it is used intentionally and done for a certain reason. Parents will spank and raise voice at a child to address behaviors, and abusive behavior may be more erratic and can happen without any intent to correct a child's behavior and is done with malicious intent. According to Stanford.edu, some behavior changes when abuse is present would be patterns of fear, anxiety, a child being really clingy, social withdrawal, and depression in a child, and attendance issue at school. Sleeping problems, and if you notice the child is always tired. Physical clues would be poor hygiene, dressed inappropriately for the weather, lack of care and medical needs from their parent, bruising, fractures, burns, cuts, facial injuries, and traumatic hair loss. If you suspect any of these signs or symptoms in a child, you can call the number 1-800-4-A-CHILD, which is 1-800-422-4453. Is the child hotline, child help hotline, or you can go to childhelphotline.org. That is one of the websites that we have as a resource to help find children, to help a child in need. They allow calls, texts, and online chats to report abuse. But if you believe a child is in immediate danger, please dial 911 for help. According to childhelphotline.org, over 115,000 calls were made in the year of 2021 for children that were at risk. That number doesn't include any other resources available to report child abuse. Can you imagine ignoring the signs of abuse and later reading a story in the paper about that child's death? How would you feel after making a mistake of not helping that child? Or can you picture a child being saved because of a call that you made instead of turning a blind eye? Can you imagine the feeling the child might have after getting saved from their abuser? Today, we went over 3 effects of child abuse: psychological and mental disorder, criminal activity and delinquency, and resulting in child fatality. I hope these 3 main consequences persuade you to speak up and check in on these children before it's too late. Thank you again. My name is Xenia.